if you're obsessed with food, if you know what happens and what goes into food, there is a clear opportunity to pick up a segment that you think you can add an interesting sort of bring an interesting product out that's healthier than or a truly healthy product, and run the D2C marketing playbook around that.
And honestly, so when it comes to food, you don't have to put in the investment to set up the manufacturing, because most of the processes that you have thought about, you can get somebody else to do the processes. So, for example, the dehydrated fruit founder that I spoke to, they were not doing any of the processing themselves. They were buying their fruits from somewhere. They were sending the fruits to some dehydrating facility. They were dehydrating it for them. They were packaging it for them, and they were sending it. And they were basically a marketing company. And when you speak to a lot of these other, when you talk about chips, you talk about maybe even ice cream. I'm not sure about ice cream, but there are facilities. You just give them the recipe. You have to work on the recipe. You give them the recipe, they do all the processing for you, they give you the final product, and you basically just market that product. And it's the marketing and it's the recipe creation that is the hard part. The actual processing and the production is not that hard from what I have seen by talking to people.
100% true, 100% true. So when I first thought about it, my initial thought was it's very difficult, high barriers to entry, because not everybody can produce these things. But when I read
Yeah.
more about it, I think there is a set of maybe 10 processes, from extrusion to liquefying to drying to whatnot, which a lot of manufacturers in India already have those capabilities, right? You just need to work with these people to get your product out there. As you said, the investment probably goes into working with these food technologists and food consultants that can help you get the recipe right, which is a big piece in itself. And then the marketing aspect, again, a big piece in itself. So no way we are saying that it's easy to create these brands, but the manufacturing is not going to be that big a trouble. You still have to work with the vendors and you still have to figure out vendors, but that capability exists, and that's one of the opportunities that are out there, right? I think food processing is one of those sectors where the existing players are not going to be able to scale up to the demand. So maybe there's something that you can do in the manufacturing space which is focused more on the healthier ingredients, or processing healthier ingredients, or using more healthy sort of alternatives of processing, right? For example, air frying and stuff like that, compared to deep frying that a lot of chips go through. If you can build the infrastructure for air frying and these, whatever however you call it, just the healthier alternatives of making these products, I think that's an interesting segment from an opportunity perspective that you could potentially get into. The other
Yeah.
opportunity that I thought about is this whole food processing sector. When I looked at, let's go back to Four Sigmatic, right? Four Sigmatic produces needs a ton of mushrooms, and those ton of mushrooms need to be, processed and mixed and whatnot to be made into coffee. Who do you think produces Four Sigmatic? Which country do you think produces Four Sigmatic coffee?
Probably India, I don't know, or
China.
Indonesia, I don't know.
China.
Oh yeah.
Like usual. Like China has this huge, like, mushroom farming setup and the processing setup and whatnot. I think the same thing can be done in India with the set of, the right policies, the right capital infusion and stuff like that. But India as a food processing destination is a very interesting concept, because we produce a large variety of grains, fruits, and vegetables that can actually be consumed for food processing within India. A lot of it is also wasted, right? And the thing with food processing is all the stuff that you can't sell because it looks ugly, it's slightly pulpy and stuff like
Yeah.
that, can actually be used for food processing. That's where the magic is, right? The tomato ketchup that you're eating is probably from the shittiest looking tomatoes. It's not the nice round red tomatoes that you want to go out and buy. So from that perspective, I think India is a destination for food processing exports, and somebody who can make that bridge gap happen. Like we spoke about in the episode with Sajid, this whole SaaS transactions marketplace, which is happening in the fashion industry, the apparel industry, with fashions are targeting the external international buyers with a SaaS solution, saying that, hey, we'll help you, just click a button and everything is going to be ordered, and you're going to see transparently where it's being bought from and how it's being done. The same thing can be applied in the food processing sector itself.
um Shit, what did you just mention? You talk about the shittiest food. So interesting that you mentioned the shittiest food, because when I was in college, I worked with this NGO called Food Not Bombs for like 4 years. And basically what we used to do at that time is we used to take all the rejected vegetables from grocery stores, and we used to cook it, and we used to give it to homeless people. And honestly, once you cook it, you can't tell the difference. I That used to be my lunch for 4 years on every Saturday. So I used to eat it all the time, and there's nothing wrong with it. And yeah, that's a really good point that you make. The second thing that I want to mention, and you spoke about Sajit's episode. In his episode and in his report, Sajit mentions that India 1, which is a much larger segment, is about 110 million people. That's a pretty big market. But India 1 Alpha, which is the cream of the cream of India 1, the richest of India 1, living in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Pune, the kind of people who are consuming Netflix, the kind of people who can afford to buy raw press every day, that is 10 million people. 10 million people is much smaller than 110 million people, but that's still a very large market. And that's still a
You
large number of people who can spend money on this. Like, for example, I consume yoga bar every day, um, which is maybe something I should not be doing. But yeah, because I'm part of India One Alpha, and I can afford to do it. And there are 10 million other people in India who can do that.
What a flex, Sahil. But okay, no, I completely agree. I think it's a fairly small market. But one of the things that I read when a lot of these founders were interviewed for a bunch of different articles, everybody kept saying that tier two, tier three has also come up to, as a demand center for this market. And then this goes back to Sajid's point. The India One Alpha also resides in tier two, tier three cities. The India One also resides in tier two, tier three cities. I think what this does is it's a small enough market for them to sort of play around, get their product offering right, get their marketing right, get their distribution right, and slowly and surely, where as and when the aspirations are already there, as in when the income increases for this India One and maybe you're the top layer of India Two, a lot of these products are going to be consumed. I think there's an interesting case study to do in terms of the pricing strategy a lot of these companies will follow, right? If you price it too high, you sort of keep the other segments out, but you can probably have a healthier, profitable business, less in turnover, but a profitable business. Somebody can go after slightly more mass market with an aggressive pricing. I think there's a pricing strategy that different startups are going to play different games here. But the core
And
remains, yeah,
I think you can also go regional, right?
yeah,
Right? Because healthy snacks for, let's say, Indore, where Indore is obsessed with poha, right? Some kind of a poha alternative in Indore, or like a South Indian snack for Tamil Nadu, for Kerala. So I think you can also go regional, so that a really pan India brand won't attack your market, because they won't be able to match those flavors, etc., etc. And it's something you can have a healthy, very good tasting, small brand, but that does well, that's profitable.
yeah. And I think there are a bunch of recipes and dishes that are hidden in regional parts of the country that probably only make sense for that particular weather, which is why they're limited to that region, and there can be brands built around that. An
Can
interesting
I
story on this. An interesting story on this whole regional to national or global thing is the millet story, right?
Hmm.
Soulful Foods spoke about it. This whole foxtail millet and quinoa, and I don't know, there are just jowar millet and bajra millet. These are all millets that already existed in the Indian culture if you go back in the day, right? This is what people used to consume, and these were significantly healthier version than the wheat and rice that the entire country started consuming maybe in when the green revolution happened, and for years after that. And now we're going back to millets. Now we're going back to products that are made out of these millets because we understand the nutritional profile of these things, right? So a lot of these regional grains or products can actually go national and in some cases go global, because millet farming in India is a pretty big thing, and there's a huge export market for millets. So if somebody wants to do that as an opportunity, right, just organize the millet farming in India, and figure out the buyers in the Western countries and Southeast Asian countries wherever millets can't be grown very easily. I think that's a market in itself from a trading, export, import perspective.
Can I give another example? So, which is very similar to what you just said. So, one of my friends, he's building a business out of jackfruit, right? And when he started this, one of the reasons, I asked him a question like, "Why are you using jackfruit?" He said that 90% or 95% of jackfruit in India is wasted, right? Because you have these giant jackfruits, they fall on the ground, and nobody's really interested in eating it. I think jackfruit is a very popular dish in South India, in like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, those kind of places. So it's a regional fruit which he's now trying to incorporate into recipes that he can sell across the country, and probably recipes that he can sell across the world. He's gotten a lot of interest from healthy food, meat alternative, venture funds around the world who want to invest in him, right? Because so then this is something that he can export as well. So it goes back to that whole wastage of vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. Like jackfruit is one of the ones that's wasted the most. What else is wasted a lot? What else can you then process and make it into a higher level, which you can sell with much higher gross margins? Food processing has very high gross margins because the raw material is so cheap.
India has been obsessed with imported goods. India one alpha probably more, alpha probably more, because it's a status symbol. You're going out and buying at food hall and stuff like that. But a lot of these things don't need to be imported, right? A lot of these things can be manufactured in India. So that's an interesting way of looking at what are these food products that are being imported in India and what can I make in India, right? Certain kind of cheeses, for example, a lot of cheese gets
Yeah,
imported from France and other European nations. Can we
yeah.
actually make them in India itself, because we have a healthy dairy industry in India, right? So that's another way to figure out where the
I,
opportunities are.
I've actually had some Indian made like fancy cheese. It's obviously not as good as the imported cheeses, but I think that industry is also is nascent. It's just starting out.
But think about this, right? It's not as good as imported because you've lived in a lot of these countries, you've consumed the cheeses there. But for
Yeah.
somebody who's not had the same exposure, it's going to be a really good cheese for them, anyways, right?
I
Um,
think Amul. I think Amul has like Amul Gouda and stuff like that. I might be wrong. I think I've
I
seen
think
that.
I've seen Indian players getting into it. But okay, coming back to the infrastructure play, right? This whole Anka Samor play is really good because not only can you have leverage with the larger brands, the original point actually started with when you're negotiating with a food hall or a big bazaar or any other large supermarket, these brands practically have no leverage, right? Like they are at the mercy of this big supermarket chain. So having a layer that can sort of aggregate a lot of these products is a genius play. It brings negotiation power, and what it also does is they can actually do a lot more data analytics and data crunching to figure out the credit opportunities. A lot of these manufacturers or these brands need credit because you need to put this product in a supermarket and you get paid 90 days later, 120 days later, 150 days later, right? So they can actually plug in the credit hole. I think I think some Anka Samor is a very interesting opportunity. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, now this goes back to my experience of this whole organic food and clean food and stuff like that. Back in 16, 17, I tried my hand with this. I realized I suck at it. This is not a good founder market fit. I decided to quit and I moved on from it. But that experience of trying to build something in the organic space taught me that it doesn't matter if your food is organic or not. You can get the licenses, you can get the testing done, everything can be fixed, quote unquote, in India. I remember calling a government lab or a private lab, and I started asking them questions on how do you what's the charge for it, how do you do the testing and whatnot. And at the end the sales guy was like, no, you don't even have to send the products, right? Like if you yeah, we'll figure it out. So certification, proving authenticity, genuinely telling people if this is healthy or not is an interesting opportunity. How do you solve for it though?
Wait, before you go into that, the Indian government is actually coming out with grading, right? I just read this a couple of days ago. They're coming out with a grading system for all the snacks and all the food products or processed food products.
And you know what, the really large processed food players are actually very very happy, because what they need to do now is make certain tweaks, and then they can
Yeah,
slap that label on top of that chips that we know is unhealthy by calling it healthier grade or whatnot, because it's just met certain conditions that the government has put out. So it's a
yeah.
very
That's the
complex.
criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same criticism I read everywhere. Yeah,
Exactly. It's a very food is a very complex thing that you can't just standardize, right? Because when you talk about different kinds of nutrients, macronutrients, oil, sugar, it's a complex ballgame. But anyway, what I was coming back to is, how do you build this credibility, how do you build this trust with the audience? There's a company in the US called examine.com, does millions of dollars, right? And they have a pure subscription business. What they do is no bullshit, just take the products and examine and lay down a lot of these things as to what these ingredients are. I don't know if you've seen the latest whole truth food ads. Genius. Again, like I really like their marketing strategy. So they did an ad where they're working with a scientist and they're talking about these different chemical names that you and I will read on this back of these products and we'll never understand what these are. And what he was doing in that ad was, oh, so it's just another word for corn syrup. oh, it's just another word for XYZ, which is just unhealthy, right? So the brands start to confuse you with these ingredient lists. What examine.com does, I think they do it purely for nutritional products or supplements, is they'll go line by line, they actually do research and come back with results on how healthy this is, what kind of ingredients that they have, and give you an unbiased take. Because they are funded by the end consumer through subscriptions and they're not funded by advertisements, they can actually do that. So a similar service in India, probably led by one of the fitness influencers or people on YouTube. There's a guy called FitTuber, really good, really good content. And he does something similar where he takes a lot of look at these products and talks about which is healthy, which is not healthy, what are the ingredients in there. Probably led by somebody like him, because you can figure out distribution. But building a service where, the India One Alpha at least can get into a subscription, worth 2000 rupees a year, 3000 rupees a year. We pay like what, 7000 rupees for Netflix, for a healthy, if somebody can actually break that down for me, I don't know, I may be able to pay 1500, 2000 a year to actually get a report on all these products, the new age products that call themselves healthy. I think that examine.com subscription led model to build trust, to build credibility, is going to be a very, very interesting opportunity.
So that they've wanted to talk about examine.com, I think, for the last year.
Exactly.
It's been
I
it's been
love
on
the
your to-do
business.
list for so long.
I love this business, and this was perfect. When I was going through the research, I was like, this is the point. This is where it makes sense, right? Examine.com is a fantastic business. People should check it out. What they do in the US is amazing. Uh, so
You know
yeah,
what's a very similar website that I use a lot? It's called Outdoor Gear Lab. So they do the exact same thing for outdoor gear. The exact same thing for outdoor gear, except I think they earn their revenue through affiliate links. But yeah,
interesting. So yeah, I think this is what's happening in the healthy snacks segment. As I said, I'm still bullish on the healthy snacks, not so much on healthy foods. Healthy foods, I think, is going to be a more perishable, more salad chains and maybe those popping up. But a truly large consumer products business or an FMCG business is probably going to be built in the healthy snacks segment, in the children segment, in the adult segment, maybe for certain, health conditions, food for certain health conditions. There are so much innovation that you can do in that health condition thing, right, with diabetic and stuff like that, is
yeah, I
insane.
was like, we should like diabetes food, just
Yeah,
like an entire business just built around diabetes food. That's it, nothing else.
there's
That
actually
itself is a huge market in India. Yeah.
there's actually somebody I spoke to from ISB who's doing this. I don't know it the name exactly. I will try and link it in the show notes. But they're doing this. They are, coming up with a platform, or they have a platform where you can buy all these kinds of, foods that are good for diabetic people. Um, I mean, the
I don't know
opportunities in
if
this. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if I saw the ad in India or if I saw this ad in the US, but I saw this ad recently in the last 1 month where this person is saying, like, oh, my father was diagnosed with diabetes. I didn't know. There was some very common food. They were like, oh, I didn't realize I couldn't give him that food. And then, I found out that I couldn't give him that food. That kind of very like honest kind of marketing, content marketing would do really well for diabetes, for heart conditions, for hypertension, for, yeah, all of them.
yeah. And there's a huge potential for content marketing done well in this
Yeah.
segment, right?
Yeah.
If you can bring transparency, one of the ideas that's also living rent free in my head, and I think a lot more companies should do this, is Whole Truth Food and ID Foods both did this, where they put a drone or a camera within their manufacturing facility, where whoever wants to come in, click and see what's happening in their manufacturing facility with different camera angles and stuff like that, can do that, right? This is when you can truly show that I'm not afraid of you actually checking out how we make the stuff that we make. Probably not possible if you're outsourcing the manufacturing, but both these people obviously control the manufacturing itself, and hence can do this. But in general, I think content marketing, if done right, is a huge segment within the healthy food category.
Dude, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I once spoke to a founder of a milk brand, and he was planning to add cameras to his pasture, I guess, so you can see how happy his cows are.